All right, welcome to our April monthly meeting. We do have Wayne Bradshaw with Utah Leagues of Cities and Towns. He's their Director of Policy. He's going to be giving us a legal update on some of the new laws that have been passed and how that's going to impact us. He is a graduate of Utah State in 2007, and he's worked in this policy position on the federal and state level. He's started his career in Washington, D.C., working for a member of Congress covering healthcare, education, social services. In 2012, he moved to Utah to work on public land issues. And in 2014, he transitioned into working for the state of Utah, first with the Utah Department of Agricultural and Food. And he was their policy analyst, and he later moved into their marketing division as director. After that, he has joined Utah League of Cities and Towns. Let's welcome him. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction. I appreciate it. So thanks for the opportunity to come and chat with you this year. We tracked about 254 bills. And I'm going to cover about 6 bills today, but if there's something that I don't cover, I can try and follow up later with that, or try and answer it on the spot today. Let me go ahead and share my screen. So again, Wayne Bradshaw with Utah League of Cities and Towns. There's my email address. The bills I'm going to cover today are HB 82, single family housing modifications, HB 98, local government building regulations. So I'll probably spend the most amount of time on those 2 bills. Then HB 171, ag land use regulation, HB 309, urban farming, and then SB 161. SB 161, all of the billboard bills failed this year. And so I'll just cover that bill, but obviously it failed. Also with HB 98, the governor did veto this bill, but he only vetoed it because there are provisions in there that FEMA had issues with, and unless resolved, FEMA would pull back flood insurance allowability in the state of Utah. And so the governor vetoed this bill, but said we will fix those provisions and repass this bill in a May special session. So what I'll cover today is not law, but will be after the special session in May. So HB 82 is Representative Ray Ward's bill. It's single family housing modification. And what this bill does is it creates a new ADU, and they call it the internal accessory dwelling unit. So what we deal with is not what is new outside of the home. So if you add something in your backyard or you add something on top of your garage, what we're dealing with is in the existing home footprint. So it's internal to whatever the house footprint is, and is a permitted use in single family areas. The bill also strikes single family unrelated definitions. And so while the state had something in there saying you could only have so many unrelated individuals in your home, it strikes that provision from code. And so you could have 10 people unrelated living in your home. It does have some design regulation. So a city still can prohibit, if you're adding an internal ADU, you can prohibit the entrance from being on the front of the house. So there's some still allowable requirements for that. It allows a city to put a lien on the property. What we tried to do is negotiate to make sure that these internal ADUs didn't all become short-term rentals. And the state agreed with that. And so a city you can license the internal ADU, and you can put a lien on the single family home. And then if there's a violation, so if they are leasing the property for less than 30 days, you can you have to give them 14 days, a minimum of 14 days notice to resolve that violation. And if they fail to do that, then you can do a $100 a day assessment on the property as it continues to violate the standards. It does allow for the homeowner to appeal. And then there's also building code changes. So within currently under building code, for an ADU, you generally have to have separate heating and air conditioning systems, some extra firewall protections. This basically, in an internal ADU, it allows the same circulation system to, so heating and air, to be used in both units of the home. And then establishes a loan program to help the homeowner establish the internal ADU. So what the state is doing is they will guarantee a loan with your bank if you put an internal ADU in your home and then provide that for long-term rent for somebody below a certain income threshold. So what do cities have to do? They are required that internal ADUs are permitted use for primarily residential single-family homes. We do have some prohibitions. So if the lot size is less than 6,000 square feet, you can limit internal ADUs. You can require one parking space, and we still can have frontage requirements. What your city will have to do is they will have to look at their primary residential properties, and they have to allow up to internal ADUs up to 75% of your primary residential. You can exclude up to 25%. What we tried to argue with the legislature is there are some single family homes and residential that has older infrastructure, and so they necessarily can't support the additional residents. And so your cities can identify up to 25% of their areas and exclude them from internal ADUs. College towns have a different exception for different reasons. So if you have a university in your community, you can exclude up to 67% of your primary residential from internal ADUs. And like I said earlier, you can require a license and you can prohibit them from being a short-term rental. So the effective date is for October 1st. So if your city wants to go through the exclusion process, they need to accomplish that by October 1st. If they want to require a license, they need to put that in place by October 1st. And you can also still require building permits and those types of requirements. Your city will need to update its short-term rental statute so they can exclude internal ADUs. And obviously that would be up to you guys to enforce that and make sure that folks are, one, getting licensed, two, they are not a short-term rental. Any questions about HB 82? Okay. So HB 98, local government building regulations. Like I said earlier, this bill was vetoed, but will largely come back as it's currently written and pass under a special session in May. I think there are two sections to this bill. And the first section deals with the time that the city has to do for planning and inspection. The second part of the bill is the design elements that are now restricted. And so you probably care less about the planning review portion and more about the design elements, but I'll run through the first portion really quick. It basically, under current state code, we have 14 days to complete plan review, and then 3 days to, once a builder notifies us for inspection, you have 3 days to respond to that. If you fail to meet those statutory requirements, then the builder, if their plans are engineered stamped, they can move forward with those plans after 14 days. And the same standard goes for inspections. If they, after 3 days, if they've notified you and they have failed or the city has not responded, then the builder can move forward with their own, they can move forward with an inspector that they've hired that is a third party, DOPL insured and approved inspector to come in and do the inspection so they can move forward with their project. So there's also some definition standards in there, and then there's some exceptions. So they can't move forward if there are any Utah wildland urban interface, if there is any slope or seismic concerns. So there are exceptions to the 14 days. And so those are in the code, and your plan review office will want to make sure that they're up to speed on that. But you see here the no permits required for repair damage from a natural disaster. That is part of FEMA's concern and probably will be addressed. What they were trying to address, obviously, with the earthquake is that when trailers and homes and old buildings fell apart during the earthquake, to bring those back up to current code. They weren't built to code, but to bring them up to code had significant costs. And so what the state was saying there is let them build it back to the standard that they were originally built for. And FEMA, obviously, well, number one, we don't think that's good policy, but FEMA also does not think that that's good policy and will most likely address that in the special session. So the design elements. What we tried to do in negotiating this legislation is that builders do not want cities to be able to have a say in exterior design elements of a home. And so what we tried to do is get an exception generally for areas that we think that there should be some type of say or standard in design elements moving forward. So this is just for generally for new construction, single family homes that we know, and duplex, so meaning it's just a 2-unit townhouse. So we no longer can talk about the exterior requirements or the roof pitch or we can no longer require fencing in the front. So we've generally lost a lot of the design ability to dictate those design elements. What you see on the screen here are those exceptions. So you can overcome that restriction by putting together a planned unit development. You can basically overcome those with an agreement with the builder. You can put in code that if you think there is cladding material that is deficient, and so you can put that in code so the builder, when they come to the city, they know that they cannot use that exterior cladding element. Landscaping, we can still dictate landscaping if there is a water efficiency component to that. We still have full control in the front yard requiring landscaping. We can only go into the backyard if there is a water efficiency component to the standard. And we try to exempt older neighborhoods so that were developed before 1950 or on a historic registry. And like I said, you can overcome all of that with a development agreement between the builder. So this will be unique for each community. Newer communities that are developing in different parts of Salt Lake and Utah County, obviously you may have a development agreement for those new communities, and so design standards may be different. For older cities that have pre-1950, obviously they will have a different standard. I know that makes it complicated for generic trainings, and it will be different for each city. So I would just check with your city manager to see where they plan on moving forward under this legislation. Any questions, concerns? We will, like I said, most likely send more information out after the May special session when we see another bill pass. Next are the agriculture bills. These are very simple and will be simple for you to apply. HB 171 agriculture land use regulation. It basically, if the land is zoned agriculture, you can no longer stipulate what type of crop is grown on that property. What the state was trying to get at was specifically hemp. But there are a few cities around the state that restrict a crop on agriculture land. So cabbage, for example. A few years ago up north, there was a crop somebody leased, or a field that somebody leased. They grew cabbages, and then they lost the lease, so they never actually dug up the cabbages, and they proceeded to rot, and everyone had sauerkraut in their basements moving forward. And so the city said no more cabbage. We no longer have that ability. If it's zoned agriculture land, they can grow whatever crop they would like on that property. HB 309, urban farming. So urban farming is a definition the state has that basically says on small plots of land in urban areas, it's a designation the county can give. They receive the same ag protection provisions if they are producing a crop and making it's a production property. So they're making profit on it. They expanded the definition to just say crops and livestock and grazing. So moving forward, anything that is termed urban farming land, that it's a designation, again, generally from the county, they can now include livestock and grazing on those properties. Any questions about the two farm bills? Okay. And then finally, there were a number of billboard bills this session. There was SB 61, SB 144, and SB 120. All the billboard bills failed this year. And so, the issue is not dead, but the legislation, none of the bills passed. What SB 61 was trying to do is basically say, you can see this picture here. If there is a digital billboard on premise, then the bill said, then a billboard off premise should be able to digitize. And, we argued size and equity. What you can see here is a small digital sign on this building. And then which would, under this SB 61, would have allowed the large billboard to digitize. And we're saying they weren't the same. And obviously there was residential next door of this picture I'm showing, but this bill did not pass. Cities were encouraged by the legislature to try and create some equity. And so we are working with our larger communities and encouraging them to make sure that they work with billboard companies to allow digitization in the right spots for those communities. But again, nothing passed. And so there are no changes to the current state laws. Any questions about billboards? Or are there any questions in general about bills that passed this session? I can try and run through a few more.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
On the previous HB 171 ag use, is there a acreage that is minimally required, or is it a county or city? Can it be prohibited in county area, city area? Who has regulation over that?
Yeah, so you have the ability to determine within your city or county what you zone as ag land. And so urban ag is generally 5 acres or more. And cities don't often have a lot of agriculture zones in their communities. So this mostly impacts counties. But like I said, there was a city that, had 5 acres that was cabbage. But this impacts all agricultural zoned land. So you can no longer limit the crop type. Okay. Any other bills that were on your radar that you'd like me to try and hit on?
Can you go over the urban farming again? Explain that to me a little bit.
Sure. So again, urban farming is a zoning designation. It's largely counties that utilize this. What they try and do is, you see urban growth. There is a farm or a family farm that folks want to preserve as homes start popping around that. And so a county will generally define it as urban farming, and they get the same kind of tax breaks and protections that ag land gets. But urban farming previously was only crop related. So if you were growing fruit, vegetables, and to continue under the urban farming designation, you had to show that this was some type of money-making business. Didn't have to be significant. You could just be going to the farmer's market on the weekend, but you had to be profitable. What the state did this year is they expanded urban farming definition to include livestock and grazing. So what used to just be corn could now be corn and pigs, or they could do cows. But again, it's just if it's been deemed by zoning urban farming that this definition expansion would apply.
Okay, so we don't have like a urban farming thing, but we have like rural residential or an ag land. So would it be like agriculture zone stuff, or do we need to create an urban farming zone?
So it would be different because let's say you have properties that are 5 acres that somebody has a horse on. And that would not qualify under urban farming because they are not making a profit out of it. It's not production agriculture. This is simply for your small, they're trying to make money off of this land. And again, it's a county that does the overlay for urban farming.
Okay, so as an example, Tooele County has a case. I assume this is probably where it came from. For a couple of years, we've been fighting this guy. He has 5 acres, but it's in a rural residential. So by our definition, it's a residential property, but he has 100 head of cattle on his 5 acre land in which he is selling and obviously marketing. So would this fall under him?
Correct.
So he can have that 100 head of cattle on his property?
There's no limitation on the number of cattle, or no, there's no limitation. But the only limitation is he has to be doing it for profit. There has to be some type of business element to it.
Okay, so if he doesn't have a business license, could he fall under maybe an illegal use that way, or does this exempt him from that?
If he's running a business and the community requires a business license, then he would need to get licensed to do that.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, to be honest, this bill was going in the right direction. It had it excluded counties of the first, second, and I think third class in its original version. And then the last night of the session, it was in the Senate. They pulled that language out, sent it to the House, and passed it. And so it was just one of those last minute bills that was heading in the right direction, but ultimately didn't end up where we were hoping. All right, well, that's all I have today. Throw back over to you. If there are any other questions, feel free to shoot me an email. My email, I'll throw it up there one more time.
I have one question before you
Yep.
go on. HB 309. When it says livestock, what animal, does it list which animals are exempt, prohibited, or can or cannot be in that 5 acre parcel?
let's see. Let me look at the
Because you
bill.
said pigs, and I know that's going to be in some areas an issue. So is there a specific animal?
No, livestock production is what the definition or what it adds. And including grazing. Yeah, for profit.
Is open to interpretation then.
Yeah, but again, if your county, this is a county action, so your county has to have an ordinance in place already regarding urban farming. Yeah, but there is no other beside. It just simply says livestock production. It does not define the animal or the animal type.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, does anyone else have any other questions? Thank you, Wayne, so much. And hopefully we can get an update after that May session and see what else we might have questions on. If that's all right with you, I might touch base with you in the end of May or June.
Yep, that's great. And I'll forward these slides to you so you can disperse them as well.
Perfect. We'll put them up on our website. I appreciate it so much.
Sure, no problem.
Everyone else, just a reminder, UOCA is going to have dues. So those are going to be due. They were due in March. So look to our website. I believe Brad also sent an email that you can print off the paper copy if you need. Those will get mailed to Mark Wooten and Sandy, who is our treasurer. If you have any questions, you can send me an email or any of the board members an email. And I guess we'll see you guys next month.
Thanks, Christina. Thank you. Everyone have a great week.
Thanks, Christina.
Thank you, Christine.